Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 3 Episode 1. It's called The Blessing Way. So yeah, spoilers for the episode. It is the dawn of a new season. We left Season 2 in quite a big cliffhanger. Lots of mythology stuff was popping off. Mulder's dad was dead. Mulder was kind of left for dead, and that's one of the big things to sort of deal with as we come into this episode. And I am sorry to say I thought this episode was pretty bad. It's pretty shit, if I'm honest. I did not like it, really at all. There's a couple of little nuggets here or there that are intriguing or building the larger scope of things. But every way in which this episode follows up, particularly Mulder's side of the story, not that Scully's is perfect by any means. I do think Scully's story's kind of spinning its wheels, just waiting for Mulder to come back. That's one problem that's going on. But Mulder's side of this story, in which he is found dead, or half dead, or nearly dead, in the rubble of the canyon near where the boxcar was, the train car, and he's found by the Native Americans, who then do a ritual to guide him back to life, which involves like stripping him down and putting him on this sort of grass bed, and we get these insane visuals of Mulder on his deathbed. And he's floating kind of naked with this grass on top of him and floating in space. And then the force ghosts of both Deep Throat from season 1 and his dead dad show up to give him some advice while he's floating there in space. And I hated pretty much every second of all this. It's just not interesting to me. It's just a bit hokey and ultimately just kind of felt like we were drawing out what could have just been, we find Mulder has crawled out of the train car and survived a little bit away, and then boom, let's get the story going from there. Instead, we have to draw it out into a whole subplot for a whole episode, and it kind of made all this feel like we were just not wanting to really properly address anything that was brought up in the season 2 finale. Instead, we're just going to really draw this one element of the story out, which is how Mulder gets back to being okay. I didn't need that to be a vision quest. I didn't need that to be something where we get all this mysticism and a lot of narration from the old Native American guy just monologuing endlessly about life and death and coming back and whatever. And it's not even like the stuff that Mulder like hears from his ghosts is that interesting or exciting either. You do get some visuals, you get some glimpses of the aliens who died in the train car, like sort of when they were alive, which actually felt like kind of a big visual to get after Deep Throat speaks and he talks about his guilt and Mulder finding the truth and all that. He also goes on a little bit about how time has no meaning here, meaning that time doesn't move forward in the same way in the afterlife or something to that effect. But, like, his dad talks a lot about how, if you die, then all the truth that you're seeking will die with you, and only the secrets, the lies will remain. But fundamentally, neither of them say anything remotely new. Neither of them say anything that's adding a new context to his journey, or even adding something to give him to fight for, to go back to his body, or whatever. And even if they did say something that felt a bit more impactful, I would still probably critique it as feeling like a worse version of when Scully was on her deathbed last season. So I didn't really like any of this. I thought it was actively bad. I was actively rolling my eyes and not enjoying any of this side of the episode. And then the other side of the episode, I wasn't particularly enjoying that much either, because fundamentally it was kind of the worst, like, it was the X-Files at its worst impulses, which is Scully's approached by a man who's clearly involved with the bad guys, the powers that be. We see him in the room with the smoking man at the start talking about the files and getting the files back, which is a lot of what this rest of the plot is about the bad guys getting to these files, the JM file, no, the MJ files, not the JM. MJ files. I'm sure I made a Michael Jackson joke last episode. They're looking for the MJ files. And they suspend Scully for going off script and doing whatever she did in the finale. So her badge is taken, her gun is taken, and she is left to herself. and she's also in danger because they're searching her place. She doesn't know if she can trust Skinner, and they try and build a lot of intrigue in this episode of whether or not Skinner's going to turn on her. And he keeps being put in these positions where he's being listened to by the smoking man, so he can't quite say what he wants to say. It felt a little bit annoying to go through this with Skinner here in this episode, just because I felt like we'd kind of done this in season 2. Like, can we trust Skinner? Is he actually kind of a good guy? Is he kind of a bad guy? Is he an ally of Mulder and Scully or not? And I think for us as the audience, because we saw him go through some stuff last season, in particular, we saw him fight Mr. X to give Mulder the information that he wanted. It felt like we knew that deep down he was, he's playing the game. He has to like sort of be in line for the powers that be, but ultimately he does want to help Mulder and Scully. So it was almost a little bit frustrating having to go through the process of Scully being kind of worried that he's there to get her, kind of thing. But like I said, there's one of the guys from the powers that be kind of fancy club room. It's one of those like gentlemen's clubs kind of rooms that the smoky man talks to these other guys at the start about finding these files. This other guy shows up at Mulder's dad's funeral and comes up to Scully and is like, "Hey, you believe that Fox Mulder's still alive? That's interesting. Why do you think that?" Well, the reason why she thinks that as it happens is because she had a dream which was Mulder's ghost floating in space saying that I'm not dead yet. I'm kind of summarizing it a bit, but that was the gist of it. So we got more like floating through space visuals, and like, why is she getting these weird, like, are we trying to suggest now that Mulder and Scully are so linked that she's like sensing his presence from afar? I can't say I'm in love with that idea as a notion either, if I'm honest. But anyway, she's convinced that he's alive, and she says that to Mulder's mother, and this guy overhears at the funeral. But he comes up and he does all the vague stuff. It's basically just a new version of all the stuff that the Deep Throat originally said to Mulder back at the start of the show, which is that, hey, they'll be coming after you, and they'll do it one of two ways, and I'm actually looking out for your interests. I think he doesn't really lie about the fact that he's one of them. He kind of says that all my colleagues are being a little bit overeager or impulsive, I think was the word that he used. And she's like, "I don't trust you. Why are you trying to help me?" And it's really just about helping himself. He actually thinks it's bad for the long run if she is just murdered. But basically it puts this seed of doubt in her head that either someone or a team will be sent to kill her at her home, or someone she knows will turn out to be a killer who's been sent for her. Someone will say they're coming over, and it's really just a bullshit reason to try and build some tension for the audience that her sister might kill her, because her sister, who we've not seen in a little while, is back in this episode, and she pops up in the middle when Scully goes to see her about something else, which I'll talk about, because that's actually the one thing from Scully in this episode that I thought was interesting plot-wise. But she goes to see her sister, and they have a little bit of a confrontation and whatever, but when this is brought up by this business guy, it's really just there so that when her sister calls her later on in the episode towards the end and says, "Hey, I'm worried about you, I'm going to come over so we can talk," we're all meant to be going, "Oh, is her sister, have they gotten to her sister?" And that's not actually what's happened, of course. Ultimately, her sister is killed by assassins, one of whom I think is Krychek again. Everyone pointed out that I didn't remember who Krychek was. To be fair, as soon as someone said it was the partner that Mulder had back at the start of season 2, I knew exactly who we were all talking about. I just didn't recognize him because he's got longer hair now and stuff, but I think he's one of these two guys here at the end that kills Scully's sister. Scully's sister like lets herself into Scully's apartment and is killed as a result by these two guys at the end of the episode. But I thought that attempt to try and make us worried that Scully's sister had turned to the bad side was just annoying to me, because I didn't believe it. It felt cheap. And if it turned out to be true, if somehow Scully's sister was a bad guy and like working for the powers that be, I was going to be even more mad at the show, because I'd be pissed that everyone has someone in their family who's connected to them, and it would be too much. It would be far too much. So if that happened, I'd be pissed at the show. That didn't happen, but I'm still annoyed at the show for trying to do the cheap drama, the cheap suspense of, oh, her sister might be a bad guy. But of course, it's also meant to make you think, oh, maybe it's Skinner. Skinner's someone she knows. He said someone you know and trust. Is it someone she knows and trusts, like Skinner? So when Skinner shows up at her place, and she's already caught Skinner coming out of her building earlier in the episode, she takes her gun with her. She was going to go to her sister's, but she gets distracted because Skinner shows up. So unfortunately, that's going to be what leads to her death. But she goes with Skinner to Mulder's apartment and holds a gun on him, says, sit down, explain what you wanted to tell me, blah, blah. And he admits that Skinner already had the files, right? The digital cassette that has the original files on it, he already stole from Mulder's office. This was a really frustrating conversation because it really did feel like we're at the point now where he should be opening up a bit more and fessing up to what he's doing. But for some reason, he's still very cagey and still very combative with her. And even to the point where when she gets distracted for a second, he pulls his own gun and we end the episode in a cliffhanger standoff. Now, I'm assuming that the footsteps at the door are actually just Mulder and that immediately things are going to deflate when he walks in. But everything about Skinner and Scully's interactions this episode just felt like it was for the sake of this particular episode to give us the tension that maybe he's going to try and kill her for the powers that be. Whether or not he's like individually wants to or not, he might feel he's pushed into the corner and has to, and we're supposed to be scared that he's going to. I think that's what they're going for here. But it all just feels fabricated for the sake of what honestly is mostly a filler episode. And that is a really weird thing to say about a season premiere. Especially one that it seems like it is mostly, it's a mythology episode. But all of the important or interesting mythology stuff really boils down to two key things in this episode, and none of it's in is Scully going to be assassinated for being close to these tapes or by the powers that be? Is it Skinner that's going to kill her? None of that stuff's the interesting stuff, and certainly none of the Mulder on his deathbed seeing ghosts in space is the interesting stuff. The two interesting things I take from this episode are, one, when Mulder wakes up and he goes to see his mum, I was annoyed that the mum was also playing dumb to like everything. Like it would have been nice for her to just start talking about who his dad was and being honest about what she remembered. But when he starts asking questions about this photograph and it's his dad, it's Deep Throat, it's the smoking man. I think it might be the guy that went to see Scully as well in the photo. But from the 70s, like, okay, what were these men all up to? What were they doing? What was the truth? Blah, blah, blah. That's more concrete. It's like, okay, these people were all working together a couple of decades ago. They were up to something, and we've started to uncover what some of that stuff was. That's actually a little bit more concrete. I'm a little bit more interested in that. It's just one little quick scene, though, and nothing that couldn't just be in the next episode, technically. So, whatever. The other thing that's actually a little bit interesting is Scully finding something in her neck. She finds basically a tracking chip, is what I assume it is. And she discovers it because after she's suspended and she has to come in and talk to Skinner again, she's forced to come through the visitor's entrance of the FBI building, which means going through the metal detector. And even though she's not really got anything metal on, it still beeps and they do a quick scan of her. She has her meeting with Skinner. It goes as it goes. And when she's coming back out and she's being friendly with the security guard, she knows him clearly. She says to him, "Hey, can I walk through that again? I kind of want to just test something." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And she walks through, it beeps again. She's like, "Hey, use the hand scanner on me. Like, see if you can find something." And it ends up being the back of her neck. And this leads her to a doctor who checks it and says, "Yep, you've got something in there. There's something metal in the back of your neck." And he thinks it's shrapnel or like buckshot or something. And then it turns out that it's actually some sort of microchip. Which is what I assumed it was immediately. I was like, oh, she's been tracked. She's got a tracking device in her or an implant. And immediately I thought back to this was a subject that came up as people thinking they were being tracked. This was something that came up with, I think, Dwayne Barry's character. I think that was his name, from the two-parter last season. And I think that's even the events that she kind of recounts when she goes to the hypnotherapy after she sees her sister. She talks about men and lights and a helicopter, like, retrieving her, and I think that was at the end of the first half of that two-parter, or maybe the early part of that no, it was at the end of the two-parter. Doesn't matter. It was when she went missing for like a day or two, right? Or I said a day or two, an episode or two is what I meant to say, right? Like before she disappeared for that horrible episode 3, she was gone for this was when she left and disappeared, and it's like she's trying to recall those memories, and that's presumably when this thing was put in her neck. This felt like a really interesting thing to come out of the nowhere. I liked how it was revealed with the metal detector in a fairly mundane manner. This idea that she doesn't normally use the metal detector because she doesn't go in that entrance because she works here and she's an FBI agent, but now she has to go through it because she's a visitor, because she's suspended. I actually think that all makes sense and is a nice natural way to get to this conclusion that she discovers this item. I was okay with all that. I'm also okay with finding out that the guy who hacked into the computer database originally has turned up dead. Clearly he's been assassinated. That's fine too. But that's like a little slither of the episode. This little like 5-minute chunk from when she goes through the metal detector to when she kind of storms out of the therapist office. That's like a little 5-minute chunk in the middle. And then the rest of it just felt like we're trying to build suspense in this episode about what might happen to Scully. And it all just felt a little bit like spinning the wheels. It felt like just the same old tricks and not particularly interesting. Not terrible per se, but certainly just not really. It doesn't really feel like it's hitting on anything that the big cliffhanger from the last episode set up. It doesn't feel like we're getting satisfying next steps to anything. It just feels like we're doing, oh, Scully might get killed by the powers that be. Maybe it's Skinner. To have some tension. That's really what it boils down to. And then the Mulder stuff is just some of the worst scenes I've watched in this show, frankly. I did not enjoy any of those things. This kind of lazy attempt at mysticism and philosophy and the purpose of life and truth and secrets. This is not what I'm here for, really. So don't get me wrong, I am not worried. I am not like feeling down getting into the rest of the season because I've got a funny feeling that now that Mulder's back with the others, or I suspect that he's about to be back with the others at least, that we're going to actually advance things properly and do some, dare I say, whatever. And even if we don't, even if there's another episode or two that I don't like, we're going to be back to doing standalone episodes again soon, and I'm sure I'll have fun with a lot of those. But I did not like this episode. I found it kind of a chore to watch, and to be honest, like was actively rolling my eyes at numerous points throughout. I paused it actually about just after the space stuff, right, with the Mulder floating in space with the ghost. I actually paused it at the end of that scene and took a break for like an hour and went and got a snack and did some other things that I needed doing, because at that point I really didn't want to watch the rest of the episode. It annoyed me so much. And then I just came back to it because I wanted to get it over with and like, okay, let's get through this. Let me talk about it, say my feelings, and then we can move on with our lives. It's probably also worth mentioning the opening chunk of the episode in which the Smoky Man is desperately trying to find those files. Before he has the meeting with the others, he has like soldiers like beat up the Native American characters. Like the young kid is really badly bruised and beaten. So they really sell how harsh they're being with all that, which I appreciate at least the severity of how they're taking it, at the very least. Scully is even pulled over at the side of the road and is forced to be searched. Soldier practically cops a feel when he's searching Scully. But yeah, so there was a sense of energy at the start of the episode. I will say that. I kind of glossed over all that to talk about all the stuff that I didn't like. But the opening stuff is perfectly fine, and it kind of, other than maybe the monologue over the fire coming out of the train car, there's a lot of like talking about the fire of truth and secrets and dousing it and blah blah blah, and just the sort of thing that makes my eyes glaze over a little bit if it just feels so just so like you feel like you're being fancy with the script, but the words need to have a bit more meaning. They have to have a bit more impact, and I just wasn't feeling it with that. There was kind of a shallowness to this episode that I couldn't quite shake. And there's a little couple of tidbits that felt like it was okay linking back into the greater whole, but for the most part, it's almost like it felt the need to turn the answer to how Mulder survived into an entire subplot when it really could have just been one scene. But no, we have to have him on his deathbed. We have to have him doing all this. We have to have the Vision Quest and so on. We didn't need any of that. We didn't need all of that. It just felt like padding. It was a chore to sit through. Welcome to season 3 of X-Files. Was not starting off on its strongest foot, I'll say that much. So hopefully I feel much more positive on episode 2, because this is like I don't usually expect to come out of the first episode of a season thinking, oh, that's probably going to be in the bottom 3 episodes. And I kind of hope it is, honestly, because if it isn't, then that means I've got 3 worse episodes this season, and that's that's not terrible, don't get me wrong. 4 bad episodes in a season of 24, 25 episodes is perfectly reasonable. But I would like to think that most of them I'm going to like more than this. As far as scene of the week goes, it probably has to be Scully realizing what's in her neck. Probably the metal detector part itself, because it felt like she was using her smarts to figure that out. But that's probably the best I've got for an option there. Rating wise, this is like a 4 out of 10 for me. I think it's actively a bad episode that I'm not going to remember fondly, and it's the sort of thing that they would like. I think it's probably easier on a binge watch if you're firing through them, because you can just get through it, get to the next one, which I hope is better. But is it being this week's episode? It's a big disappointment, and hopefully we get to something better next time. But let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. I imagine some people probably think I'm being harsh, but I really got nothing out of this one. So thank you very much for joining me. You can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And of course, you can subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that usual YouTube stuff. But I'll see you guys next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?